Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Hytken. I'm a DEI professional and disability advocate. I am here with the amazing, acclaimed Judith Heumann, who is an international disability advocate who's been doing this work for over 40 years. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm going to introduce you to a new practice today, which are my visual descriptions. My visual descriptions are that I have brown hair. I'm a white male with blue eyes. I'm currently wearing a brown shirt with a collar. What you can't see behind the camera is I also am sitting in a wheelchair with rainbow spokes to represent my queer identity. I'm going to hand it off to Judy Heumann to introduce herself. Judy, please introduce yourself to everyone.
My name is Judith Heumann. I am an almost 75-year-old disabled white woman. I have brown hair, shoulder length. I am wearing a jacket of multiple colors in pink and gray and black. I had polio in 1949, and I use a motorized wheelchair, and I will do a quick pirouette. You can see I also have purple in the back of my seat for my wheelchair.
Well, thank you so much for introducing yourself. I'm going to dote on you a little bit more. Judy, you have this amazing history that, to me, it seems like you got in by chance. That your story was preserved in the Obama-produced documentary on Netflix that was nominated for an Oscar. And that was all about how you met a group of friends at summer camp, which led to the takeover of City Hall in San Francisco, which led to Section 504 Act, which essentially introduced protections into the workspaces, access to the public and employers, and healthcare for people in governmental jobs, and was a precursor to the ADA, which you also had a hand in. You have been doing a lot. I just want to point out, by the way, Judy, when I was watching the Oscars with you in the front row, it was, as a person that always wanted to be an actor, it blew my mind to see a ramp leading up to the stage. And to me, that was this moment of, wow, we are really seeing inclusion. But I want to ask you, what is an initiative that you are particularly proud of over your expansive career? And I'd just love to know more about what you've been doing.
The film that we're discussing right now is called Crip Camp. The absence of our stories, I think, continues to minimize people's attention, both as disabled people. I mean, Jake, that when we don't see ourselves, hear about ourselves, learn about ourselves as disabled individuals, it can be not only very isolating, but I remember once talking to some teacher who had a student in her class who was deaf, who had never seen or learned about other deaf adults, who thought that he would die when he became an adult because he didn't know any other adults who were deaf. So I think there's some very significant implications for the failure to really be inclusive. Now, my life experience is very similar to the life experiences of people in my generation, and thankfully that has been changing over the decades. But in 1949, when I had polio, there were no laws that protected the rights of disabled people. And that meant everything from the built environment. So the curb cuts, the ramps you see on streets today did not exist in most parts of the country, or in most parts of the world, actually. And things like accessible buses, subway systems, bathrooms in movie theaters, on, restaurants, that did not exist. Captioning, sign language interpreters, materials for people who are blind, on. These were things that were not in existence and no laws requiring it. When you look at the film Crip Camp, one thing that you clearly see is the growth and evolution of disabled individuals who, for the first time, basically had come together, learning from the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and really beginning to speak up and out about our rights, and no longer willing to be put to the sideline. So I'm most proud of the fact that as a disability community, we are growing, we are becoming more knowledgeable, we are becoming more self-respecting and demanding more.
There's power in demanding and asking for what you deserve. I think that one of the things that we've seen, especially over the last 2 years, is one, we've been dealing with a global pandemic. We've also been dealing with the atrocities that came out of the murder of George Floyd. One thing that I partook in during this whole era were these disability sort of support groups that you were actually attending yourself. I was very upset. I missed the one where you surprised everybody with Barack Obama when you brought him into it. But what I found really interesting about that era, what remote has done is, when we had these protests going on, there was a big component of Black disabled people that, because of a pandemic, were not able to get representation of themselves out there because a lot of them had to stay indoors when protests are happening. And so we were creating spaces remotely to empower voices, to demand for rights. And that is also filtered into the changing work environment. And so I want to ask you, we know that the largest minority of underhired people is disabled people in the US. So I want to ask you what we can do to encourage organizations to be more inclusive for people with disabilities, and what practices are really going to strengthen them to allow the hiring and retention of disabled people.
When we're looking at who are disabled individuals, it's very important to recognize that a substantial number of disabled people have invisible disabilities. Maybe diabetes, maybe cancer, maybe lupus, maybe MS or Parkinson's or other disabilities which later may become more progressive, bipolar, depression, anxiety, their intellectual disabilities, very, very broad category of people. And as such, we are all individuals. And I think what we've seen as a result of the pandemic is some major changes that the workforce has undergone, where previously everyone needed to come to work and show up in order to be counted, and where we were not looking at remote work as something which is valuable. And now that's something which is being addressed differently. I really do want to come out, though, on the side that I believe we should not just look at disabled people as only wanting to work remotely, because for myself, that's not the case, and for other friends of mine. And I think we need to also recognize the value of people coming together from a social perspective, not only in contributing to work, but also contributing to mental health and well-being for people. So I think, as we're moving into the next phase of what is happening as the world of work is changing, to me, it's critically important that we not look at disabled people as a singular group that definitely would want to be working at home. What I believe needs to be happening within companies is also to be working with organizations like Disability In, that like an umbrella group of businesses that come together to learn from each other, because companies are at different places in their evolution. There is an organization called the Job Accommodations Network, which you may want to jump on to. They've got a great website. They can answer questions, give some very basic fundamental information about how to move forward. But my presumption is that many of you on this call today, this is not a new topic to you. It's one that you've been involved with for I don't know how long, but not a second. And I think you have a lot of experience and questions that you may want to be asking. And that's why I think some way of communicating with each other is very important. It is critical that you are speaking with your employees who have disabilities. It is also critical that you have things like a policy on accommodations, and that policy is not onerous. I think we really need to be ensuring that that policies on accommodations are appropriate, not onerous, because when they're onerous, that also has a chilling effect on individuals who may need an accommodation. And the accommodations can be, and typically are, very minimal. But companies like IBM, a number of years ago, instituted something where basically you didn't have to get approvals. There were certain types of what we call accommodations that you could just ask for. Fill out a form, get it. So I would say the issue of accommodations is very important. A strong ERG, strong affinity groups. And for me, what does that mean? That means that there is a real recognition from leadership. Leadership is very engaged. There is an open environment where people can feel free to speak about things that are going well and areas that need to be addressed. There should be an expectation that the employment and advancement of disabled individuals is still something that is relatively new. So we're learning. And learning is something where we should be able to talk to each other honestly and directly to make corrections. I think a culture of change within the company is very important. The inclusion of disability across other affinity groups. So affinity groups for women, for Black people, for Latinos, on and on. Disability should be a part of those groups also. We're not just looking at the issue of accessibility. We're looking for the issue of inclusion, and inclusion means that an employee can bring their whole self into the space. And if you have a disability and you're a person of color and you feel that you're being discriminated against in one or both areas, you want to be able to discuss it. Or if things don't feel right and you're wanting to be able to look at what the cause of that is and what kinds of changes need to be made. So an open environment where people feel that their thoughts are welcome is critical.
I just want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences, doing so much on just the international scale for everyone with disabilities and their own intersectional experiences. It is such a privilege for all of the tech industry to have access to you in the way that they have today, and just really, owning the fact that change is okay, examining, having open conversations, creating allyship, opening doors for, a range of experience. And, to your point, this is not a new conversation. I'm sure all these organizations at some level are exploring these avenues, and there's no better place to start or continue than now.
Let me just conclude by saying the IT industry is really a burgeoning, growing industry, and innovation is what it's all about. And so I think one other aspect that I didn't mention is the customer, and making sure that the customer is very involved with what's happening. Because if your products are not accessible, that's a whole other question, an issue that's got to be addressed. So thank you so much also for asking me to speak, and I hope you have a great conference.
Thanks, Judy.